One of the things when you are building a website, you're working with your web page and you are designing is the color. And for that, you need to understand what the term HEX means, or hex code or hex color. Welcome to Back to Basics with JP here at Brizy. And in this series, we go back to the basics, focus on beginner tutorials for those things that often just fly by and people just mention it offhandedly and expect you to know exactly what's going on. And in this one, we're just touching on colors. I can talk about colors forever. With graphic design background, I'm really into colors, and I spend way too much time sometimes on trying to get the exact color for something and then changing everything in the end. But I want to just talk briefly about the hex color. Recently, I was working with people who are starting to work with Brizy from scratch, actually here in my house. And I saw the small things that I take for granted, how they were struggling with it. And I realized every facet, whether it is typography, whether it's a color, whether it's layout, is a discipline kind of by itself that you have to learn many things from. When it comes to colors, then the hex code. So let's talk about that. I'll go to this block and you access the colors, or rather the background for the block over here. And we're going to find the color picker or this color manager all over the builder. Also, if you go to the styling here in the sidebar on the left, styling, you're going to see the swatches here. This is your global colors. Now, if I select any of them, the same color picker will appear here. But let's work with the block. So I'm jumping back to the block and let's go to colors. Quick overview. What's going on here? So here we start with some default setting that is red. And I have a selector here in the bottom left corner. And you can see that once I drag it just a little bit and drag it back, the entire background goes black. We can kind of see that is black. Click the selector and I'll drag it up all the way to the top. It looks like we are at perfect white. And then if I drag it all the way to the right, I'm going to get that perfect red hue. Now let's first talk about what's going on here on the left and right very briefly. In the very top, you're going to get pure white, and in the very bottom left, you're going to get pure black. And currently it's not pure white because I know that the name for pure white is FFF. If I'll drag it a little bit more, you're going to see we're going to get that name. This is the hex code, the hex name that we'll be talking about very soon. What happens on this graph is when I drag the slider or the selector down, I'm adding more black, more gray to whatever color it is, making it darker, changing the shade of it. On the other hand, if I move it to the right, I'm adding more color, which means I'm increasing saturation. And this is basically what you do over here. You make it lighter, you make it darker, you make it brighter. Over here, you make it more muted. At any moment on this plane here, you can just work with one color. If you want to work with a different color, that is where this slider here comes into play, which we refer to as the hue slider. Whenever you see something that looks like a rainbow, that's the hue. And the hue are all the colors of the rainbow. Currently, it's here that gives us that red. And as I move it, you can see we're going to get all these other funky colors and you can set them. And next to that, we have this blue over here, which is just a transparency opacity slider. All the way to the top is 100% opacity, which means it's the full solid color. And as I drag it down, it adds transparency. It looks like it's getting lighter. Actually, it's getting transparent. You can see that by this line, if I drag it all the way to the bottom, that this overlay is actually applied on a column basis and not for the entire block. But let's take it all the way to the top. Now, what I want to do is also duplicate that over here. If I go ahead and I do what I just did, you can kind of understand what's going to happen next, right? We are going to really struggle to get the exact same blue. I know I have to drag it up here, but there is no indicator or measurement here or a value that tells me I'm on the right blue. Just a little bit of movement, the blue changes. And I know it's somewhere up here and there. You can see we are going to struggle to match that blue. And that is where the hex name, the hex code comes in, and it stands for hexadecimal. Hexadecimal, hex meaning 6. So it consists out of 6 digits. And the digit can either be a letter or a number. And together this gives the characteristics of the color by telling which hue, which tone, and which shade. And that's how you get that color. It is that amazing that every color that you see on the screen has a specific name, though you won't be able to remember it, except if I grab this slider, drag it all the way to white, FFF, and drag it all the way to black, 000, These are the two hex code names we actually always remember for white and black. But let's put it back there on the blue. Now you understand what's going on over here in this area. This is where the hexadecimal code for the color appears, the name of that color. And before that, you will see we have the pound symbol. Instead then of trying to figure out what the hey am I going to do here to get the blues to match, all I need to do is go to this one up here, go to the colors, and double click to select it. You don't have to include the pound. We'll talk about the pound also a little bit so you don't get confused about that. Copy it, and then head on down to this block, double click, and then paste, Control V, Command V. And it's going to adapt that color, and you see we have perfect colors matching here. And that essentially is what the hex color naming system is all about. That means if you're looking for inspiration for colors away from the builder, maybe on a picture or somewhere else in Adobe Colors, you're going to be able to copy those colors into Brizy. And that's how we set up our themes and our global styling over here on the left with these swatches. Let me undo all of this ghastly blue that we've applied here and go back to where we were. And to undo, you just hit Control Z, Command Z on your keyboard. All the colors here on this page are represented by this swatch palette that we have over here. So instead of going and changing each one out one by one, I'll go ahead and change them out here, and therefore I don't need to make those minute changes all over the site one by one. One of the sites I like to use is called coolers.co, but there are so many palette generators at this moment on the market, and you can also design your own from scratch. But here I'm just going to generate a few, so I'll click here on Start the Generator, and it gives me 5 colors, not into this, so I hit spacebar, and this way I just keep on cycling until I find something that I think is going to match what I'm trying to do. I'm not sure this is going to match what I'm trying to do, but I like these funky colors, so I'm going to show you how we apply it. Now you should be able to recognize that these colors have their names here, the hexadecimal codes or the hex codes, and that is the naming for each of these colors. One thing I love about Coolers is that they actually gave the colors names, like here is Mandaro, Tan, Bright Pink Crayola, and Bright Pink Crayola, except that these two are called both Bright Pink Crayola. Very imaginative. All I need to do, let's start here with the tan, is we are going to copy it. So I can either click here and then select it. You see we have the same little scheme here as we have right inside Brizy, but I'll go ahead here and click on this copy hex, and that will copy the code for me. Note, it doesn't copy the pound, the hashtag. That's very important because when we paste it back into Brizy, I'll go to this color here. You're going to see that when I double click or select, it doesn't select the hashtag. If you hit Control A, Command A, it's going to select the hashtag. So just be aware that if something goes wrong with the color, check whether you have a hashtag or maybe you have no hashtag, or perhaps you have 2 hashtags. So you have to find your own workflow. I like to double click. It will only select the code and not the pound. And then I just go ahead, Control V, Command V, and I'll paste it. It doesn't matter if it's capital letters or not. It will translate it automatically. I had selected this swatch, which wherever this swatch was applied on my page over here, it automatically updates. Brilliant. Here it hasn't been applied, so I'll go ahead and I'll just apply it to have and drag the opacity slider to the top. Now we have to look at the rest, like this orange here. It doesn't contrast very well, so we go back here. Let's look for something that contrasts with this color. I don't think actually anything contrasts very well with this color. What I'll do is I'm going to lock this color. I'll keep it in and I'll hit spacebar again. So this color will remain, but Coolers will generate more for me around that color. So let's stick with this one, and then I'll go to copy a licorice color. Yummy, yummy. And I'll go to the orange over here, double click, and I'll paste it, and we'll see it update. Ooh, starting to look very nice. All you need to do now is go through these colors, and if you're happy that they complement the rest of your swatches, you can keep them. But if you want to switch them out with one of these generated ones, go ahead, like we see these little bullets created here. I'll go to the green, and then Control V, should turn to maroon. What are they called? Eggplant. Aubergine. And then we have this blue over here. Let's go for this one here, just to spice it up. And we do the same, Control V. And this way, we are building up a complete, entire new feeling for our site. A little trick that I can give you here, a little bit off the beaten path, is that when you work with dark colors, try and stick to your theme colors. I'll explain. If I go and click on this dark color, which I guess is this text here, let me select it. No, it's this gray here. I'll give you a tip for that one. Let's do that one first. Click on the gray, but you can see that the grain edges a little bit to the blue side. We don't really want that. I want to pretend that everybody in the world is going to appreciate the fact that I took this into consideration and didn't use this blue. So what I'm going to do is select it and say Control V. But what I'll do then is grab the selector and bring it to maybe around where that blue selector was to keep it in the same range. Now I've updated this color, but it has that tint of magenta in it, making it blend better with the rest of my theme. I know we're getting very nitty-gritty here, but this is what we kind of do along the way. The same we are going to do for the darker colors. I select this one, you'll see it's all the way over here, but still it is blue. I'll select it, I'll paste that hex color again, and then I'll drag it. And it's not black. Once I drag it all the way to the bottom, I'll get the 000, 000, and I'm going to just leave it there to bring in a little bit of that tint. And the same for this one. And this way, wherever these colors were applied, I can confidently know that I've applied my theme's colors and that it will blend nicely. I have to say I'm not too fond of this background here, but we have successfully changed it out from what we had to something brilliantly new. Do not forget one important thing, and that is the color selector within Brizy. Let's say, for example, that I want to change this background to the color, one of the colors in her shirt. I'll go to our color settings and I'll grab this little eyedropper icon. Now, when I hover over the page, you will see that little eyedropper appears and I can find the yellow that I think or an orange that will work over here, and I'll click on it and it'll apply that color. From here, I'll go ahead and select the color, copy it, hop back over here into my global styling because you don't want to do it on a one-by-one basis. You want to do it on a global level, much more easier. I'll paste it, Control-Command-V. Now I have this orange applied all over, really liking this one. And one more step then is just to go back here and put this one back on the swatch because we used the eyedropper. It would have made it a custom swatch and didn't select the swatch. And I want to keep it there. So if I make any changes in the future to this color swatch, it will also update over here. That brings us to the end of hex colors. You don't need to know anything more than that. You don't need to know where the numbers and the digits come from or how the colors are described. You just need to know that every color on the screen combines red, green, and blue, and those make up the digits in the hex color. So that means that every color you see has their own name. And you have to make sure that when you are using an orange across your entire site, that they have the same hex code for that uniformity. Better design, better engagement. That brings us to the end of this tutorial. Hope it was useful. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, give us a like, and visit us at brizy.io.